the discovery of bones in a shallow grave has brought American scientists to Siberia in Russia's wild east. Anthony Falsetti is one of the world's leading forensic anthropologists. His job is to read clues in the smallest fragment of flesh or bone. A veteran of the Boxing Day tsunami and 9/11 investigations, he's well used to working in extreme conditions.
It's really vast out here, so desolate, so far away from civilization, but that's where two bodies are supposed to be.
He's joined by Dr. Michael Coble, who works for the Pentagon, identifying the remains of American soldiers. With the world's largest DNA facilities at his disposal, he'll attempt to give a name to the bones. With them is translator Peter Sarandinaki, whose ancestors knew and fought for the Tsar. The Kremlin is taking the find very seriously because the new grave is just 70 meters from one found in 1991. That burial contained the bones of the Tsar and his family, murdered by Bolsheviks. But there was a problem.
Two bodies are still missing, and it is a mystery. There was controversial historical accounts on this. Whether they were buried separately or survived, who knows?
The missing bodies were those of two of the royal children. Falsetti was part of this original investigation. 17 years later, he's back. The Kremlin wants science to end the mystery. Did two of the children escape the cellar and survive, as many believe?
When I arrive at a crime scene, what I hope to find are the facts. Who found it, when they found it, and under what conditions.
But this is not a conventional crime scene. The locals who made the find are not experts. Digging for the lost royals has been a weekend obsession.
So, what did you find? Where did you find it?
Останки двух православных святых примерно вот в этом месте.
This is where the hole was, but now the ground's frozen and the bones are in safekeeping. Falsetti would have liked photographs and measurements, fine detail.
What else did you find with it? Any artifacts?
Что еще? Нашли кости и что-то другое. Только уголь я нашел.
What I'm hearing is they have bones, maybe some projectiles. What we don't have is any evidence of a really controlled excavation, and it's quite frankly making me nervous.
20 miles away is the city of Ekaterinburg, where the Tsar and his family were imprisoned and executed. The bones are in the morgue. The team are aware of the challenge ahead.
We don't know whether they're human bones. We don't know how many individuals are present. What we do know is the location, which is very near where the other remains were found.
Mike Coble is more optimistic.
As we could see today, that soil is completely frozen. This is very good for preserving DNA. Then there's a good chance we may get some DNA out of these.
Falsetti and Coble have been called in on a scientific mission. But for many Russians, the issue is an emotional one. Now a shrine, the incomplete family grave found in 1991 was a disappointment to the people. They want the missing children found. Falsetti and Coble must now try to determine if 48 tiny fragments of bone offer that possibility. For the Kremlin, there's another factor. The possible survival of a Romanov heir is a political issue.
If Anastasia survived and if she had a child, that child would today have at least a very strong moral claim to be head of the Romanov dynasty and a claim to the Russian throne in the future.
The stakes are high. Can Falsetti and Coble sort myth from scientific fact and solve the riddle of the Romanovs? The Romanovs awaited their fate in the city of Ekaterinburg. It's here that DNA specialist Mike Coble and forensic expert Anthony Falsetti now arrive to make their initial assessment of the remains that might finally close the book on the story. When Falsetti came here for the 1991 investigation of the first set of Romanov bones, he was caught up in the start of a high-profile scientific dispute.
Throughout the 90s, there were many investigations. They were all done in the world spotlight.
There was no doubt that the skeleton of Prince Alexei was not in the grave. Falsetti and Kobel have to find Alexei and an unspecified sister to solve the mystery. The investigators are anxious to avoid media attention, but their examination of the bones quickly becomes an impromptu press conference.
We arrive into the lab and there's a massive number of cameras and people doing interviews while we're trying to look at the remains.
It's a media circus. I don't think these people have any understanding of contamination, the potential for breakage of these samples, and just losing them under all of this chaos.
Are the conditions good enough for you?
If these are the Romanovs, they were used to being photographed, but I'm not sure why they're willing to compromise the forensic science by that. That's worrisome.
A single rogue fingerprint or drop of sweat on any of the bones could affect DNA analysis.
Once the cameras are gone, we get down to work. And what I discover is that these 44 fragments, many we're not going to be able to identify. There's just not enough material here.
Falsetti is a forensic anthropologist, routinely examining skeletal remains to try to read their story. He's searching these fragments for signs of a boy of 11 and a girl in her mid to late teens. It's half a day before he can shed some light.
At this point, we've got at least 2 individuals. One of them is larger and probably older than the other, and that's really where we are at this point.
By late afternoon, painstaking examination leads to a small breakthrough.
It doesn't look like much. It is a portion of the pelvis. It is our os cox, and as it turns out, it is from a female. We can deduce that by the sciatic notch. In males, it would be more narrow. In females, it is quite wide. That is critical. We know we have 2 people. Now we know that one of them is female.
Not only a female, but a teenager.